Okay, hello. Thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to Beyond the Price Tag, Alternative Ways of Valuing Art, a panel discussion hosted by Exotero Collective and YAMI-ICHI as part of Traversing Borders. My name is Charlotte Alderman. I'm one of the co-founders of Exotero Collective and one half of the Traversing Borders programme. I'm going to be the facilitator of tonight's event. Just to tell you a little bit more about Exotero Collective and what we do. So Exotero is a creators collective. It's led by Sabrina, Michaela, Isabel, and myself. And we work together to connect artists and audiences through visionary and alternative public programs. Each one of our events responds to different issues in today's art world. Our approach is intersectional and interdisciplinary, and we aim to offer accessible and communal spaces that encourage long-lasting dialogues, and these are often through meaningful and reciprocal collaborations. Joining me tonight as co-host is Sachi, the wonderful founder of YAMI-ICHI, just given a wave just now, and she's also the creator of the non-monetary art auction. Sachi has staged 4 non-monetary art auctions in the past 5 years and has worked with emerging artists from all around the world. I'm sure she's going to have some fascinating insights about the art market and the art industry to share with you all throughout. We are both excited and honoured to have speakers from Gatekeeper Magazine, Groock's Gallery and New Groove's Gallery with us tonight. Tonight's panel discussion will cover alternative ways of valuing art beyond monetary transactions. So what's failing in the current art system? How can we build a more sustainable and supportive art environment? These are just some of the questions that we're going to explore tonight and hopefully answer in the discussion. So there will be a little bit of time at the end of the discussion for anyone in the audience to ask a question. So if you would like to ask a question, just pop it into the Q&A box and we'll be sure to get to you at the end. So now I'm just going to speak a little bit about Traversing Borders and what the programme's about. So this event today marks the beginning of Traversing Borders, a digital programme of free participatory events run by experimental collectives Exotero and YAMI-ICHI. Our aim is to help emerging artists find their footing in the industry and to challenge the current perception of art as a commodity. At the core of the programme is a one-of-a-kind art auction, one that replaces cash payments with non-monetary exchanges. We have selected 4 UK-based artists, all multidisciplinary and from different backgrounds, including Becky, Henry, Shani and Merny, and they will be helping us co-produce a series of events and also will be selling their works at the art auction. This Saturday, our artists will be hosting a selection of creative activities, including a game of symbol bingo with Becky, a performed party piece by Henry, a studio tour with Shani, and an ongoing piece entitled Project Journal by Merny. The event day is the perfect opportunity to get to know more about each of the artists and to see their work in a fun and light-hearted environment ahead of the non-monetary art auction, which will be taking place on the 8th of May. So please do join us. All of the events are free and open to all, and we'd really love to see you there. If you would like to sign up to any of these events or see more about the entire programme, there will be a link in the chat for you to follow, and you can also visit the Exotero Collective and YAMI-ICHI websites. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Sachi just to talk a little bit about YAMI-ICHI.
Great. Thank you so much for your introduction, Charlotte. And hello, everyone. My name is Sachiko Osawa, and I'm a founder and creative director of YAMI-ICHI project. And I'm so excited to co-host this event with the Exotero team tonight, and thank you so much for joining us. I would like to give you a quick introduction to what YAMI-ICHI does. YAMI-ICHI means black market in Japanese, and it is a non-monetary art auction. So we've been running this project since 2017, and since our debut event in Tokyo, we've traveled around the world and staged the events in different countries. As you can see on the screen, I have 3 amazing team members working with me who are all from different countries and backgrounds, but one thing we all have in common is a passion for art and making the art market more open and accessible for wider audiences. Next slide, please. And our aim is to challenge the perception of art as a commodity in a capitalistic art market. Now, it sounds quite formal, but it's so important for us to do that in a provocative and playful way, involving both artists and the public. And we would also like to encourage artists to rethink and evaluate how their work can be perceived by their audiences and connect them with their potential clients, collaborators, and local communities. And ultimately, we would like to open up our market to the wider public, not only by introducing these non-monetary trade-offs and exchanges, but also by holding our events in non-traditional spaces, often collaborating with local communities and businesses. So for example, our London event in 2017 happened in a collaboration with the Camden Council, and we held an event at the vacant shop, which was owned by council-owned estates in King's Cross. And therefore, we had a wide variety of visitors coming into our event, and from art lovers, local businesses and communities, all the way to residents living upstairs. So that was all amazing. So you might be wondering how this auction actually works. And here are some images from the past events. Our event often runs across 3 to 4 days, and we have mainly 2 parts. So it starts with the pre-auction period, which includes mini residency, public viewing, and artist-led workshops where artists create and exhibit their works. And it's completely open to public, and artists are there. So you can talk to them, ask any questions, and learn more about the process of art making. Then on the last day, visitors are invited to the non-monetary art auction where you get a chance to win your favorite artworks. And unlike traditional art auctions, the unique thing about YAMI-ICHI auction is that artists are there to present their work themselves, including their ambition and their ideal offers. So the bidders, you guys, need to listen carefully about what would be the most valuable offer for those artists. And obviously, you can't bid money in this auction, but you can bid your services, skills, or things you have in exchange for your favorite artwork. And once all the bidders present their offers, the artists choose their favorite one, and the deal is made and things get serious. So they sign the contract, they exchange the contract. Because of the nature of our event, the relationship between the bidders and the artists doesn't end there, but actually continues after the auction. And the image on the right is a good example of this. In our Tokyo event, there was an artist who chose an exciting offer, which was a professional coaching for climbing a snow mountain. And a few months after the event, I received this lovely picture of the artist and the bidder posing at the top of the mountain. And since then, it became their hobby, and they went climbing together more than 3 times. So this is just one example of our past auction experiences, but there are so many more interesting stories like this that I would love to share with you another time. And one of the most important points here, though, which is, I think, deeply related to the topic of our discussion tonight, is that the participants can freely exchange their ideas of what they think is a valuable offer for the artwork, and the artists are the ones who can decide which offers has higher value or lower value. I hope this quick intro gave you a clear idea of what we do. And if you want to know more about it, as Charlotte said, we will share a link to our website and socials, as well as an introductory video. So please visit the link, which will be posted in the chat room later. So that's enough for me. And then now that we introduced ourselves in the Traversing Borders program, we would like to let our lovely speakers in this panel introduce themselves. So we have Lucy from Gatekeeper Magazine, George from Groock's Gallery, Eleanor and Zoë from New Grooves Gallery. So Lucy, would you like to start?
Yeah, hi, I'm an artist and co-founder of Gatekeeper Magazine, along with Natasha Ng, who should be in the audience. Gatekeeper started in 2020 following me graduating from Camberwell College of Arts. It's a biannual printed publication, and it's based on collecting submissions and around the art market. We also do a lot digitally on Instagram as well, so I'm sure that might be in the chat at some point. I saw a gap within magazines that didn't cover the bargaining and questioning of the market, when so many artists and creatives already do this through their practice. At Gatekeeper, we believe that artists' careers should not be dictated and controlled by a higher power. Gatekeeper is ironic. The name's ironic. I hope people realise that. I get worried sometimes that they don't. We research and provide an eclectic mixture of art, writing and projects that tackles the art market, but we also hope to provide scope for alternative economies and ecosystems. That's me done.
Great. I think next is George from Groock's Gallery.
Hi, I'm George, and I am an artist and a virtual curator. So I started Groock's Gallery in 2016 after studying my BA in fine art, after completing my studies, and basically I was fed up with having to pay for open calls and being rejected by them. So I decided to make my own gallery space, a virtual gallery space that was free to apply. And I think the free to apply has been at the core of it, really, because of just it being a kind of a privilege to have access to building this kind of virtual gallery space. I feel that is what the reason why I wanted to share it, is because it's one of those things where not everyone has access to a PC that's powerful enough to render a virtual space, and it feels sort of disingenuous to like rent that space out. It sort of goes against things that I believe, and it just feels wrong. So that's kind of why it's free to apply for Groock's Gallery. But Groock's Gallery it resides in a converted, you could say a borrowed piece of architecture from a video game that was then decked out and edited to become what it is today. And then, it mainly exists on Instagram, but being a multi-dimensional gallery, it does have other facets, such as we've had a gig there, we've had a virtual exhibition tour, so we've had like a kind of live stream event, as well as the Instagram page, which is kind of like where most people have their work on display, although there have been a variety of exhibitions throughout its existence. But I think, yeah, we've had one of the things I really enjoy about it is that we've had a mixture of artists, and it goes by the kind of this philosophy of radical inclusion. So basically just saying yes to everyone. So everyone who applies, I just try and get them in there. So that's kind of what it is. And it kind of, I guess it goes back to like the original ideas of the internet and how the internet was about connection. And yeah, and it wasn't so much about sort of making money when it first started evolving. But yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. I think that idea of radical inclusion segues nicely into Zoe and Eleanor. So maybe Eleanor, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure thing. So hello, I'm Eleanor. I'm a painter and illustrator, and Zoe and I started New Grooves Gallery, which is an Instagram-based gallery, in November. I'll pass on to Zoe.
We can share on the load.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Zoe. I'm not an artist, but I'm kind of within this industry still. I'm looking forward to doing my MA in Arts and Cultural Management at the end of this year, so still somewhat related. And yeah, like Eleanor said, we started last year in November, and we kind of have this focus on well-being and mental health, which is something that Eleanor and I are both passionate about. And we can share this, but Eleanor and I were saying how so many people had started doing these creative things throughout the first and second lockdown, and we were so inspired by it. We were seeing people on social media and around us and our friends and everything who were taking up new kind of hobbies or experimenting with different art forms if they already had a practice or whatever. And Eleanor?
Yeah, so I noticed that, well, Zoe started watercoloring these wonderful nudes, and I could see, you know, someone's nan had crocheted a beautiful jumper or made a lovely sculpture or something for the first time ever. And I spoke to Zoe about it, and we decided to come up with this platform to put anybody who wants to be creative in an exhibition space, which, you know, is not the easiest thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to feel like an artist. So yeah. And then it kind of grew, and then artists got involved, and then we made this kind of community together. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for those great introductions. It was so great to hear more about all of your organisations individually. I think to begin, I'm just going to ask Lucy the first question. So I was really interested in what sparked the beginning of Gatekeeper Magazine, and if you could speak a little bit more about those early origins when you found that gap in the market.
Yeah, of course. As I touched upon briefly, I studied at Camberwell College of Arts, and I actually studied fine art photography. And during my third year, I wrote my dissertation on how artists utilise the art market as a medium within their practice, which might sound a bit heavy, and it was at times, but I just began to have this huge interest in the art market. I found that during my course, it was quite a taboo topic. The idea of selling your work and pitching yourself as an artist, but also a business person, and all of those things was just not really spoken about enough. And whereas the reality of being an artist is you need to live, and you need to pay your bills, and you need to pay rent. So yeah, I had a huge interest in that. And I realized that I wasn't the only one thinking the art market is overwhelming and scary. And there were so many conversations and so many different things around the art market. And there was no publication that sort of collated these things together. So I guess that's kind of where it started. So I approached Natasha, who's the other co-founder, and she was a recent journalism graduate. So she was really interested in getting on board a publication and a magazine, which was super helpful for me, who had like no knowledge of how to start a magazine. And yeah, we started it. I think especially it's key to say it started in 2020 during the pandemic. And I think in a way it heightened some of the issues within the art world, especially how there's no longer physical shows, networking was a lot harder, and all of those things. I mean, the future felt quite bleak for a lot of creatives. And I know a big thing for 2020 students was having their degree show cancelled, which is a huge career launching moment. We felt that was sort of why, you know, we couldn't wait much longer and we wanted to launch it. And yeah, we just wanted to start having those conversations around developing a healthier ecosystem, which yeah, just needed to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think that idea of a healthier ecosystem and also starting things in university is something that Sachi can really relate to with the creation of the non-monetary art auction itself. I don't know if you want to expand a bit more on that, Sachi.
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, it really resonates with my own experience. YAMI-ICHI started as, you know, partly from my personal experience of being in a kind of, you know, art auction or art exhibition, and then feeling excluded or marginalized. And then I constantly felt like I don't belong here because there's so many, you know, unspoken rules, and it's, you know, the rules are made by those, you know, elitist, you know, quite limited demographic of people. And I just felt really uncomfortable. And then I was constantly feeling, how can I actually, well, where those, you know, kind of uncomfortable feeling come from? Why does it happen? But also, how can I make sure that, you know, people who are feeling the same way can also access the art market, but in a more inclusive and interactive and engaging ways? So that's how I started thinking about YAMI-ICHI, but also looking more into detail of how our market works, and, you know, how many billions of pounds transacted during a kind of short period of time in art auction, for example. It just made me realize that we really need to rethink how we are valuing art at the moment, how we're pricing it. And I'm fully aware that, no monetary art auction, all these artists are joining with the curiosity and the spirit of experiment, but also they need to make their own living. They need to pay for rent. So I'm not really against the fact that they have to, get some money, but also I just want to make sure that there's an alternative way where people can freely exchange the ideas of valuing art, and then, just try something else out together. So yeah, it really resonates, Lucy's story.
Yeah, I definitely think the goal of Exotero is to find that alternative method of valuing art, and that doesn't mean that we don't want artists to live and earn great livings, but that is something that often people can view in quite a binary way. So that's really, really interesting that you brought that up. I think just going off that point of value, and just to segue maybe towards George and Groock's gallery, how has display in the virtual realm, or for you personally from the experience of setting up a virtual gallery space, affected the way in which you value perhaps your art practice or art in general?
Yeah, well, I feel like to me, I think that a lot of value in the art that I make is about learning and knowledge, and passing on that knowledge in some way, sometimes in the form of just a conversation about the work and how it was made, or what kind of theory I'm tackling to do with philosophy or science perhaps. And that to me is a really positive value I find in art practice, is this kind of learning experience that you can take people along with you with, and it becomes a kind of almost like a pedagogical, like teachery type. But then you learn from what people respond to when they bring their world view and their perception to your work, and then they say something that you've never heard about. To me that's a really crystalline piece of value that I find in art practice. And I feel that perhaps that the putting it in a virtual space, it opens it out to the world, and then suddenly you're getting like messages and emails from people who you probably never would have bumped into, and a lot of that can be really valuable actually. Like there's a lot about the negativity of online space, and yeah, I definitely don't want to like say that that's not happening, because it's definitely, there definitely is a lot of negativity out there, but there are those positive gems that you would never encounter in a physical space, because you wouldn't have access to those people. I'm talking about like sort of, yeah, people from different cultures all around the world, because it is like a world wide web, of course. So it's that's fantastic, and I love that about the virtual space. But I think that also to go to the point of the art market, because the virtual realm is given us an alternative to the global art market, which is amazing. Like, I don't think this has ever happened before, like in the history, to have a separate space that's almost running alongside the art market, and it's definitely growing. Like, you can see that, especially with like the artist support pledge, and I mean, a bit controversial, but like NFTs, but but like, I mean, there's definitely alternatives growing in the virtual realm, which are really exciting. And it's amazing to hear from all of you guys and how it's actually happening. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think just for me personally, like the fact that Exotero and YAMI-ICHI are able to collaborate and bring the non-monetary art auction to the virtual sphere has been such an interesting experience. And when we set out to put on the art auction, this was very much related to the pandemic. We had to kind of adapt onto the virtual sphere. But in doing so, that has kind of forced us to engage and really get to grips with what the virtual sphere means. I don't know if you want to expand a bit more on that, on your experience, Sachi, having off the back end staged for non-monetary art auctions in person.
Yeah, it's definitely challenge and exciting opportunity for me as well, because we've never done online event. You know, when I was hosting the past events, it was all physical, you know, people meet face to face. And that was I think for me personally, the most important thing as well. People have this personal connection and then, you know, build a relationship. And then that becomes like an ongoing relationship. But now that I'm thinking, you know, looking at all these art organizations going virtual and then doing, you know, exploring the new way of exhibiting and then kind of providing to the wider audiences to join and enjoy the art, I feel like this is a great way of experimenting the new ways of, you know, doing this YAMI-ICHI event too, and then non-monetary art auction, although we need to do, you know, many tests so that, you know, people can, you know, bid offers, but there is some kind of regulations and, you know, people need to monitor and make sure that artists find, you know, not random offers and sometimes, you know, insulting ones, but also some valuable ones as well. So there is a bit of scary bit, and I must say I'm a bit nervous about it, but also I'm really excited about this new type of auction online. Yeah.
Definitely. I think whenever I've spoken to anyone about bringing the non-monetary art auction online, it's definitely a kind of scary prospect, but I think that is something you have to do. You kind of have to take these risks in order for these experimental actions to pay off. And I feel like that's something Zoe and Eleanor can really relate to as a smaller art space platform. And I was just wondering what you from New Grooves Gallery thought that smaller art-based platforms were offering perhaps that is missing from the mainstream art world or art market at the moment.
So I think that kind of drawing on what we were saying previously with radical inclusivity or inclusion, it's these like niche spaces now which are popping up, and everyone has their kind of community that they've created, and we're kind of targeting to people that might not have been shown previously or who might not have a space dedicated to them. And I think with Eleanor and I and New Grooves, creating this space, kind of like a safe space for people who might not necessarily be established artists or even want to be that, people who just have made something to make themselves feel better and have tried something and had this process of experimentation and want to show their work, whether maybe they've already shown it to their family and friends and now they want to have the space to put it on there with their story like alongside it. And I think Eleanor and I kind of created this set of questions to go alongside people's work, and it really gives you, if you look through the Instagram page, it really gives you an insight into what they were feeling when they created that. And it's this kind of like human aspect to the art field and this like sphere which seems so kind of exclusive at times.
Yeah, in the questions that because we spend quite a bit of time thinking what is the best way to make the person submitting not feel like an artist but submit the work in the way that they would like to and not be, I don't know, coerced into feeling like they have to say something. But I do think in our modern time, art is being seen a bit differently because it's a bit more human-based, like Zoe said. Like, you know, art as a well-being activity is interesting because art therapy was only coined as a term in, I think it was 1942. So it's a very, very new thing. And so doing that for yourself and making art and feeling confident enough to show other people it is really transforming. And so I think we're in an interesting time for this to develop and then change the art world from there, from the inside in. So
Yeah.
for smaller initiatives, I think they definitely recognize that. And it's about, I don't know, taking the pressure off, I guess, off the top and the bottom.
Yeah, completely. I think also with the inclusivity and everything, is these smaller arts-based platforms, is they're creating a space, as I say, for those communities that might not have been shown otherwise. So you have kind of these groups that I've seen on Instagram or other platforms, which are just dedicated to women, or just dedicated to minority ethnic groups, or just dedicated to whatever. And they pop up and you have this like support network, which is amazing. And then you're kind of introduced to art or whatever, which you might have never seen beforehand, because obviously, as we all know, the art market and everything is so saturated with one group of people. So it's amazing to be introduced to all of that.
And it broadens up the type of artwork that's involved and shown around, and people's ideas in such a new and interesting way. So yeah, we're at the start.
Also, though, I wouldn't say internet, solved all the problems, because I think that kind of, led to the new type of different, issues as well, because not many people, not everyone in the world have access to internet, for example. And also, what I love from those past events at YAMI-ICHI is that kind of incidental moment where people from upstairs just come down to see what's happening in a space, and then just happen to meet all these artists and start the conversation. There was a guy living in this council house upstairs, came here and said to me, "I hate art, I don't understand it, but then by the time he go out from that room, he made friend with one of those artists, and then he came back to the art auction. So, this kind of thing doesn't often happen, because on the internet, like this conference, you have to register and you have to know that it's there. So, it's good and bad. And so that's why I think for YAMI-ICHI in the future, if there is a way of combining those online sphere and also offline sphere, I think that's the best way to kind of, tackle this inclusivity issue as well.
Definitely. I think the question of inclusivity and value really comes back to a lot of what we were speaking about earlier, in terms of artists needing to be able to live and pay their bills and function in society, but also they need emotional support and value, to feel valued amongst their community of artists and also friends. So I was wondering, maybe now we could just open up some more general questions and have a bit more of an open discussion with all the panelists. And I'll get to some of the audience questions, which I can see we've got 3 here now. Please do feel free to ask any more if anyone else wants to. So to everyone, what do you think is more important for artists today, commercial value or social value, or perhaps neither one?
It's a tricky one. I think that I think it's got to be a bit of both in a way, but you can't go too, if you went too solid on one, you're gonna get into trouble, because if you go too solid on the social aspect and you end up, I don't know, without making any money from your art, I don't really see how you could survive. Although if you go too solid on the commercial aspect, you're gonna end up, I don't know, you'll just be stressed. I don't know, you just be incredibly stressed, and just your life will just be that. Is my answer to that question.
George, I remember the conversation we had before, when you were saying you used to, as an artist, you used to think that you have to struggle in order to survive as an artist. Do you want to share a little bit more about your personal story?
Yeah, well, I used to think that, like you had to, well, I didn't want to make money from any of my work, and it was definitely an attitude that was around in art schools, that was like, oh, you have to struggle, you have to not make any money or anything, and it's just this like attitude that I've seen around like various art schools, and it's weird. It's like a kind of like, oh, you have to be poor and struggling to be an artist, so you have to like be in your room alone and just like, but I don't see why it has to be like that. Like why, people, every job gets paid. Like, why can't an artist job be paid? Like, it just doesn't seem logical. Like, it doesn't make any sense. it's not saying that like, oh, we should all become like commercial artists, because there are other ways of like, you know, like public funding, like, and different ways of doing things. But I think it definitely it's definitely, that goes back to that, what we were saying about that middle ground, I think. And it's just with everything in life, everything should be a balance, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, no, completely. I remember the last time we spoke, and I brought up that stat that I had read recently, which was that it's something crazy, like 70% of artists earning between 5 and 10k a year, which is less than minimum wage, at least in the UK. And it's just appalling. It's crazy. And this thing between valuing like commercial human value or commercial, and the struggle that if you're not making money from your art, you have to make money elsewhere, which would then take away time you could dedicate to your art. And it's this like such a complex and kind of vicious cycle of, if you're not making money, then you have to do it somewhere else, and it's so difficult.
And I think that there's also, it's also the fact that the government, you know, doesn't value it in that way, and it's the fact that it's almost like a side note that like, oh, there's all this art going on, and it's like, oh, we'll just like let this happen, and you know, only the top artists will survive. All those other artists, you know, we don't care about them. And it's like, oh, that's just like what it's like. They don't see any value in art in government. It's just it just makes me sad.
No,
Yeah,
and it's
definitely.
crazy with sorry.
No, it's fine. It's hard to tell. I was gonna say, just to like add in terms of like the stats you were saying, Zoe, like we had a feature in our first issue. She's called Aline Benjaminson, and she was very key around the transparency of like she made an exhibition grid, and she listed everything, all of the exhibitions she's participated in, costs of materials, transport costs, time, everything. And she updates it all the time. And I think I checked the other day, and she, in a year, well, in it every day, she would earn 22.46 euros. That's it. And he's like a practicing artist.
Yeah, it reminds me of at university, we'd have an artist talk every week, and every single artist that came in would say, by the way, you have to have 2 other jobs, but I also did this, but it's all about the struggle and the whatever. But does that make you a good artist? I don't know, but it makes you an artist by struggling. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and with the value thing, George, that you said, I read something else that was saying that actually the reason that like the thing that drives tourism in the UK is the arts and heritage sector, and so and it's just insane to me that then that's one of the most important things that brings in the economy and whatever, and we're not kind of valuing it in the same way that we value other things, like, I don't know, other jobs, other normal jobs that we have been told make money and are stable.
Exactly. I mean, it goes back to that advert, you know, of like, oh, that ballerina advert where it's like, oh, you should be in IT or something. It's like, oh god, it's like, what are you thinking? Like, this is the biggest element. Like, this is such a massive element of the economy, and it's just like they just can't see it. Like, it's just weird. They live on Mars, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the way in which the government values art like continues to astound me, and I think the way in which people who choose to pursue arts-based careers are considered like they're taking a risk or they're brave for doing that is just so frustrating. But now I'm really interested in just staying with this kind of idea. Obviously, we have a model at the moment that isn't functioning and isn't creating a space for artists to exist and practice and earn money in a sustainable kind of way. So maybe I could just ask you all how you think we could go about trying to prioritize sustainable methods, or long-term methods of exchange that do support artists?
I think it goes to collectives. I think it's a thing about banding together, isn't it? It's like Karl Marx, you know, sees the means of production sort of vibe. I think I think it's, yeah, finding those groups and, yeah, joining forces and working together, and not being about, you know, like just commercial, because otherwise that you won't make any friends. You know, you're just going to be going. You need to have that human connection, I think. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the human connection side. Thinking about one person who submitted to New Grooves, there was a guy called Grant, and he made a gallery in his front garden, and all the artworks were made out of pieces of rubbish that he found on the street. And so the community would come in and walk around it, and it was just a lovely thing to witness. So you can see that on our page if you want to look at his gallery. But that's such an interesting thing for people to feel part of just by living there. And I think the changing of the view of going to an exhibition and seeing art will change the way that, you know, it starts from the bottom.
Definitely. And like for me personally, I think one of the most important things is artists' relationship with other artists. I found just through the huge amount of research I do for Gatekeeper that artist run initiatives and projects are so important, because how can you talk or write or produce any critical dialogue to do with art unless you're directly immersed in it yourself or experience it yourself? And I think the future generation of artists will have this different mindset and hopefully strive to create some sort of change.
If I could just add to that as well, it's the idea as well of everyone being an artist and everyone moving forward together. I think is a really powerful idea, and like especially with this idea of art therapy, like art is definitely, you know, it's good for you. it's actually good for you to make art, like, and I think if people realize that and values it, like, it would definitely be promoted more by from a higher level, I'm sure.
No, completely. And with the whole art being used as kind of therapy practices and everything, just to sprout some more information that I've absorbed, I read something a while ago that said that the implementation of art therapy within like the realm of dementia has reduced the need for medical intervention by something like 60%, and that's huge, and it doesn't get spoken about. And it's just, if you read any of the posts on New Grooves, and they're like personal stories from all these people from all across the world, there's people there who have just picked up a pencil for the first time and doodled, and it's made them feel a specific kind of way during this really difficult year for everyone. And it's really moving actually reading a lot of the people's stories and seeing how actually creativity in any shape or form has helped them in some way throughout this time. It's quite moving.
I think one artist in particular that is quite important in terms of art therapy and the art market is Yayoi Kusama, because when she was very young, she fled Japan and moved to New York and then started making her artwork. And the dots that she's famous for, a lot of research has been done on, they're called repetitive hand movements, but doing that over and over again in art form and in art therapy is actually a way of helping the brain deal with trauma, because you're able to concentrate in a comfortable way and express yourself. And so for Yayoi Kusama to be so famous for something that she's so proud of and so wonderful at, is such an interesting thing in the terms of art therapy and the art market to change all of that. And yeah, and she's also a woman, which I think is cool too.
Definitely. I think that's, yeah, Kusama is such an incredible example of that, and how, yeah, we can still value people and still value the person behind the artwork at the end of the day, and not just advocate for spending loads and loads of money on one piece. Yeah, thank you guys. I think now I'm just going to go to a few of the audience questions because we've got a few here. And the first one is directed, addressed to Saatchi. So it's from Madeline de Flippis, and she asks, although your art fairs are based on the premise of the non-monetary exchange, many people consider their time, actions, etc. to be worth compensation, especially in a capitalist society. What do you say to these people when they question the authenticity of your approach? Thanks.
Shall, sorry, my network is so terrible that I lost maybe your last 10 seconds. Can you repeat that again?
Of course. So she was asking about, although the non-monetary art fairs are based on the premise of the non-monetary exchange, many people consider their time, actions and money to be worth compensation. So what do you say to these people, especially when they question, oh, I think we've just lost Saatchi there. Okay, maybe I can go to one of the other questions from the audience to all the panelists, and we'll come back to Saatchi in a second. So when establishing your companies or projects, how did you go about branding and working out what public image you wanted to present? Don't know if anyone wants to go first.
I mean, I can maybe. For me, the name is the important part about, I guess, branding and image. And it was just during my dissertation when I was reading all of this like art text, art market, horrendous, overwhelming, like you had to like use a thesaurus every other word kind of thing. And it, like every so often I just got gatekeeper. And it just stuck with me, and I felt like it was like a great name. And I think with public image, it's so important. I think Instagram is a great tool to find collaborators and like-minded people. So that again was very important for us to achieve. And again, we've changed our public image, our logo, our color scheme, if you're looking at from a branding point of view, all the time. It's trial and error to see what works and to see what people kind of, I guess, find interesting. And yeah, it's been, I'm sure we're going to change more, but it's just, trial and error, I think, for us.
Yeah, I guess that idea of being adaptable is something perhaps, George, you could speak a bit more on, because Groock's Gallery has been going for quite a few years now.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, for me, the idea of a temple was quite important, I think, and it being a kind of sort of a reference to like kind of a museum aesthetic. Because of my interest in the knowledge and the kind of learning element that I feel is associated with museums. But I think the kind of it being a kind of a temple that's based on a kind of an amalgamation of Western and Eastern design, I quite liked. It's sort of bringing together all kinds of aspects of architectural design. And then I guess, the temple being a kind of a site of value. And I guess that's kind of that image is stuck with Groock's Gallery since the beginning, but it's throughout the years of it being online, it has evolved from, if you scroll back on the Instagram like many pages, you see that it was a very low res originally, and then it's kind of been added upon, and textures and walls have been built, virtually built, and like it's definitely an evolving space. And the fact that it's weird because it is in multi-dimensional space, so it has these different aspects. It's almost like you can encounter it at different points, and people have different perceptions of the space, which is why I still have the name spelt slightly weirdly, because I invented it when I was like 6 years old. It was like an imaginary character, but yeah, it's the fact that it's spelt like Groock, that it's actually pronounced Grok. That's the reference to the fact that it's people have different perspectives of it. It's multi-perspective space.
100%. I really just wanted to ask this one question to Eleanor, and maybe you guys could all expand on it, just about Kusama's work. How do you think the value of her art has changed, given a lot of her work is experience-based, i.e. that it can't be bought or owned? And could the value of the art become more experiential rather than commodified? And I think that maybe you could just expand on the branding of New Grooves within that as well, being quite based on people and experiences as well.
Sure. Well, with Kusama's work, it's interesting because she makes it for herself, and she said that. But when you view it, because of the large scale of a lot of her pieces, you're invited in. So I think they're called infinity nets. And so you're sort of lost in her world. And then that conversation between the image and you is, I don't know, a similar idea that she has when she makes it. So I guess that's coming to it. What was the second question? Sorry.
No problem. So maybe you could talk a bit more about how this came into like the branding of New Grooves, or the image that you put out, more so for the last question.
So New Grooves was, well, when we were brainstorming the name for it, we wanted something that was quite fun. It wasn't, I don't know, it didn't need to sound too much like a gallery. It wanted to be quite, groovy. So, that's where that came from.
No, so yes, we were thinking of this word groovy and what we could do with it. And then we also thought grooves as in like the grooves of a tree, and like these new things and these new kind of,
like the Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah, like these new qualities that you take on. And we just thought the main thing about New Grooves is like the accessibility aspect of it and the inclusivity aspect of it. So we wanted it to just be welcome to all. And if you look at our page, it's really colourful and kind of just fun, really, as Eleanor said.
Yeah, we wanted to make it seem as less like white wall, here's a picture, here's art, just kind of put a frame around it, it's colourful, it's nice, it all comes together. So, yeah. And that comes into the logo.
Emperor's New Groove is the best film.
Really good film.
Definitely. Thanks for that. I think we've just got time for one more question that I wanted to ask all of you. So if each of you could possibly give a piece of advice to all the artists out there who are learning to navigate the art industry, what you think could help them, or how they could value their art, whatever you think, just any piece of advice.
And I'm so sorry, guys. And Madeline, I think you were the one who gave me questions, and I'm just thrown out, but I'm back.
Actually, maybe you could answer that question.
Yeah, sure. Definitely advice. When I was doing the research for this project, I interviewed and did a kind of survey with around 200 young and emerging artists, and most of them said, I remember them saying that at school, you learn how to make stuff, but you never learn how to sell stuff or how the art market works. And that was the biggest gap that I found from that research. And so I would definitely say to those, people who are studying at the college, maybe in the art sector, definitely do some research about how the art market is working. And then, the amazing panel speakers today, they all have amazing platform to assist you learning how those, current art market works, and then what's the kind of supporting system there are. So definitely do some research, and also proactively join to those, small groups like YAMI-ICHI and all these, people who have here as a speaker. and then seek out for help and then get information from those people. And, you know, just as George was saying, I think it's really important, the sense of community and just to speaking to each other and then help each other. So those are the advice I would give.
I would say be persistent in what you do, be around, and collaborate and have fun would be my top tips.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, all of these points are amazing. I think I would add, go out of your way, look for new things, for new opportunities, whether they're paid, whether they're not, meet new people, and like do as many things as you can to show your passion and your determination to kind of break in, because it is so competitive and you want to shine in the crowd.
Yeah, I agree. And I think persistence is a big thing, and also very much have fun with it, because that's what it's a passion thing at the end of the day, isn't it? But I think you've also not got to get down if things don't happen immediately. I think in art, things happen quite slowly and sort of randomly at times. So yeah, be persistent and enjoy it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, everyone said pretty much everything I'd say, but there's so much advice and support out there. There's so, like, you know, go out and find it as well, utilize what there is out there. And also, like, your fellow artists are your friends, your colleagues, your peers. Use them, collaborate with them, grab their shoulder and cry on it. Like, they know what you're experiencing, and they're probably, yeah, they're the best.
Definitely. Thank you all so much for answering that. It was really, really emotional. I felt really, really, yeah, great. I'm so sorry to Madeline and to anyone else who asked a question that we didn't manage to get round to, but we will be answering any unanswered questions on our social media, so definitely stay tuned and have a look out for that. So that's just about all we've got time for today. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who attended our first event in the Traversing Borders programme. Please do check out our other events coming up later this week. So we've got the artist-led event days taking place throughout this Saturday, and then also we've got the non-monetary art auction on the 8th of May. And I believe the link to that is on our social media and also in the chat and on our websites if you want to check out more. If you've enjoyed learning more about any of our discussions with the alternative art market or ways to value art, please do follow us on social media at Exotero Collective and at YAMI-ICHI_arts. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say one final thanks to Lucy, to George, to Eleanor, to Zoe. Thank you so much for taking part. It was so great to have a great conversation with you, really insightful. To Sachi for being a wonderful co-host and always providing such interesting perspectives on alternative ways to value art. And to all the team members behind the scenes as well, who you guys can't see at the moment, but to Sabrina, to Mickey, Ellen, Isabel, pardon me, from Exotero, and to Koyal and Mandy from YAMI-ICHI. Thank you guys so much for all your work. Yeah, it's been a great discussion, and I really look forward to seeing you all at our next event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.